Okay, let's get into this. We've been looking at a really complex stack of sources, all detailing how a single catastrophic event can just, fundamentally reshape a country's entire economic landscape.
Instantly.
Instantly. So today we are doing a deep dive into Jamaica's property market, really analyzing its reality right now in the immediate wake of Hurricane Melissa.
Yeah, and this isn't a story about slow, gradual economic shifts. It's really a study in shock absorption. When Hurricane Melissa made landfall on October 28th, 2025, it wasn't just a weather event.
No.
It was an immediate, massive shock to the built environment that just set off these cascading economic consequences.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to trace that impact through the source material to figure out exactly how this combination of sudden recovery efforts and the looming pressure of long-term climate change is changing what value and risk even mean.
Right, for everyone.
For everyone, buyers, sellers, developers, policymakers, they're all entering 2026 with a brand new set of rules.
And to really understand that pivot the market made, you first have to grasp the magnitude of the disaster. The sources, they paint a very stark picture.
They really do. Let's start with the hard numbers because they put the human tragedy right at the front. As of November 11, 2025, so just 2 weeks after landfall, the official count was 45 confirmed deaths in Jamaica.
And that devastating human toll is matched by this astronomical physical and financial cost that now, it defines the market. The sheer scale is just staggering. Estimates put the total damage around $10 billion US. But look at the physical impact. Nearly 200,000 buildings were damaged.
200,000. That figure alone, it's nearly a fifth of the island's housing stock. That tells you this isn't some normal market correction.
No, it's a foundational crisis.
It is. And that immense shock to the built environment is now the primary factor influencing every single property decision you see in the data for early 2026.
That damage instantly shifted the whole market dynamic. The sources show that, real estate activity didn't completely stop. People still needed to move, sell, settle claims.
Of course.
But the fundamental questions people were asking changed overnight. Before Melissa, it was all about location and price.
Right.
Now it's about survival, resilience, and the actual mechanics of recovery.
And it transitions so fast from that macro disaster to what is, for so many people, a micro-administrative nightmare. Let's zoom in right there on the actual plumbing of the recovery process.
Okay, so the recovery signals showed up immediately in the financial and property systems. For example, you have the National Housing Trust, the NHT, which is Jamaica's main entity for affordable housing and mortgages.
Right.
They had to step in right away. They publicly outlined these very specific disaster relief measures to support their affected mortgagors.
So you have government and quasi-governmental bodies immediately trying to cushion the blow. But the sources highlight this bureaucratic mechanism that paradoxically is now creating a huge bottleneck.
The insurance claim deadline.
Exactly.
The most critical administrative detail that's influencing the pace of repairs was this insurance claim deadline set for January 15th, 2026.
That is so tight. Given we're analyzing this material in early January, that means households and businesses are literally racing against that clock as we speak. But why does that one specific administrative detail have so much power over the entire real estate ecosystem?
Well, it creates this enormous tension, between speed and thoroughness. That action filing and resolving the claim, it determines how quickly a family can move from a temporary shelter back into their home.
Back to some kind of normalcy.
Exactly. So if that claim isn't resolved or maybe wasn't even submitted by that deadline, that property's future is just thrown into limbo.
And that limbo must have a huge impact on transactions.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you're a seller who suffered damage. You have unresolved claims, outstanding repair work.
Suddenly you have these incredibly complex disclosure issues.
Buyers aren't just looking at the house anymore. They're looking at the paperwork. They're asking, is this property fully remediated? Is it documented? Was the insurance payout correct?
It changes the valuation complexity completely. A buyer might find a property at what seems like a great price, but if the seller is waiting on an insurance adjuster or a structural sign-off,
that potential 2-month closing can just stretch on forever.
Indefinitely. And the cost isn't just the repair anymore, it's the cost of time and all that uncertainty.
So this means that if you're a seller and you want a clean, fast closing, you absolutely must be able to present that full documentation. The paperwork showing the property either survived well or that all the remediation is complete and certified.
Yeah, that clean paperwork has become a premium feature in itself.
It's a commodity.
It is. And what's fascinating is how quickly the market internalized this new reality. It really paved the way for, I think, the biggest takeaway from the sources, what you called the aha moment,
New definition of value.
driven entirely by climate reality.
Yes, and that's where the analysis from Dean Jones, the founder of Jamaica Homes, becomes so important. He noted that after Melissa, the market fundamentally changed what value even means. It's not enough to be close to the beach anymore.
No, resilience has moved from being like a bonus feature to a core asset.
And we saw this shift happen almost instantly in buyer due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
Traditionally, due diligence is price, size, location.
Standard stuff. Now, the sources show buyers are prioritizing practical resilience attributes in the same breath as price.
And what are those attributes
Mhm.
specifically? The list is really striking because it just highlights how granular the buyer anxiety has become.
Mm-hmm.
They're now prioritizing things like drainage systems, the specific building materials used, not just how they look, but their structural integrity, the design of the roof.
And maybe most critically, the insurance history and the future insurability of the property.
Which makes total sense. These things matter because Melissa just brutally exposed how vulnerable certain construction types and planning decisions really were.
If 200,000 buildings were damaged, that means 200,000 lessons were learned instantly about what fails under extreme wind and water. Buyers are now using that data to screen properties.
This moves beyond just individual anxiety then, and it becomes a headline land use issue. Melissa reinforced a reality that Jamaica has struggled with for a long time, where housing development decisions, often driven by affordability, end up amplifying hazard exposure.
Flooding, landslides, yeah.
Exactly. And this is forcing risk discussions right into the center of policy and planning, which is where the financial sector, it seems, takes over.
Yes. If we connect this new requirement for resilience to the bigger picture for developers, risk is no longer just an engineering challenge. It has become a fundamental finance question.
Which is just logical. Lenders and insurers who just absorbed a collective, $10 billion hit, they're now actively repricing climate risk into their products.
They have to. They're looking to externalize that cost and mitigate their future exposure.
So what are the consequences of that for the construction industry, I mean?
Well, they're entirely predictable and practical. The sources suggest this accelerated focus on resilience is going to lead to several non-negotiable changes. Higher site preparation costs.
So more money on drainage, foundations?
Right. More stringent build specifications demanded by the lenders, and longer planning approvals because regulators are scrutinizing site suitability far more intensely than before.
And the final consequence of all that scrutiny and higher cost.
More conservative valuations at exposed locations. They're not just estimating the current market value anymore, they're building the cost of future climate events into today's price tag.
So the market is imposing a kind of self-correction.
In a way, yes. It's ensuring that the person taking on the risk, whether that's the homeowner, the bank, or the insurer, is fully compensated or protected for that exposure.
This brings us to what might be the most complex part of this, the affordability paradox. Because you have all this recovery pressure, this need for higher quality, more expensive buildings laid on top of the enduring challenge of keeping housing affordable.
That's the core tension, isn't it? The country desperately needs capital and materials to rebuild those 200,000 structures and also expand supply.
But the households themselves are incredibly cost-sensitive, especially after a shock that likely disrupted incomes and jobs.
Exactly.
We should probably look at the monetary policy context that was in place heading into the storm. The Bank of Jamaica's policy rate was held steady at 5.75% through late 2025. What does that signal?
Holding that rate relatively steady is really designed to support credit access and overall stability. In theory, it should help keep mortgage financing manageable for buyers and let the reconstruction industry borrow capital.
Okay, so monetary policy is trying to stabilize credit. But if we look at fiscal policy, the reliance on government finance to keep housing affordable was already staggering even before Melissa.
Yeah, this is where the sheer scale of the subsidy becomes visible.
The source material points to a really sharp figure here. The government's fiscal policy documentation for this fiscal year, 2025-26, projected the National Housing Trust's mortgage interest rate subsidy costs at $10.6 billion.
10.6 billion Jamaican dollars.
Just to subsidize interest rates. That's a massive figure. But for listeners who might not be familiar with the Jamaican budget, can you put that into perspective for us?
Sure. It signals how profoundly dependent the current affordable housing ecosystem is on government support. That money ensures that lower-income households can access mortgage rates far below what the market would offer.
So it's baked into the system.
It's baked in. The fact that the government budgeted over $10 billion for this specific mechanism shows that affordability is always a central concern, even in stable times.
Right. So it's a systemic necessity, not some temporary measure. Now, you layer the massive new repair costs and the demand for more expensive, resilient construction on top of that baseline.
And the affordability challenge becomes incredibly acute, especially for the most vulnerable.
This is that sharp intersection of recovery and affordability, particularly for renters and those low-income households who were already struggling.
The storm-related displacement naturally tightens the rental market. Thousands of displaced homeowners are looking for temporary shelter.
So supply shrinks and rents go up immediately.
Right. And for those already holding debt, the risk just skyrockets. You have a combination of income disruption from the storm and unexpected repair costs.
Yeah.
It's a recipe for a higher risk of mortgage arrears.
And even for those who manage to keep their homes, the rising cost of insurance and better maintenance, it's not a one-off bill anymore. It becomes this crushing, recurring affordability issue.
It's the cost of being insurable and resilient year after year.
So let's try to synthesize this shift. The insight captured in our sources sums it up really well. Hurricane Melissa didn't start the climate risk conversation, but it accelerated it dramatically.
Exactly. Jamaican real estate is still anchored in fundamentals like location and community strength, but climate exposure. It's no longer seen as some external threat you just insure against.
It's now explicitly treated as a core determinant of long-term household security.
The market has moved into an era of pricing future risk.
So here's where it gets really actionable for you. If you're looking at the Jamaican market in early 2026, what should you expect to see?
You're going to see significantly increased due diligence.
Focused heavily on resilience, repair status, and crucially, that documented paper trail of recovery.
And developers are going to face stronger, non-negotiable pressure. They won't just need to pass an inspection. They'll need to demonstrate site suitability and construction durability that meets the expectations of, frankly, skeptical lenders and insurers.
The ultimate policy challenge, which the sources really wrestle with, is still profound. How do land use decisions and housing strategies actively work to reduce hazard exposure for the next generation instead of deepening it?
Because every single decision made during this recovery is setting the precedent for the next storm.
That scrutiny is essential. That $10 billion in damage confirms the vulnerability of current planning choices. It's quantified now.
There's a price tag on it.
This has been a critical deep dive. We started by looking at that terrifying scale of physical damage. 45 confirmed deaths, 200,000 buildings damaged. Then we tracked how that administrative bottleneck, the January 15th insurance deadline, is controlling the pace of recovery.
Right.
And finally, we saw this fundamental shift in how resilience is valued, now ranking equally alongside price and location in a buyer's calculus.
You know, this all raises an important question based on the fiscal data we just talked about. If the government's reliance on subsidy is already so substantial, that $10.6 billion figure, which was projected before the full cost of rebuilding from Melissa even hit the system, what does that signal about the long-term sustainability of affordable housing? If new construction costs more because resilience is now mandated and future risk is constantly being factored into insurance and lending, what level of subsidy is ultimately required for Jamaica to ensure housing access for its citizens? Especially in a future that is continually climate pressured. That level of long-term financial commitment, that's what we need to watch.